Hi, folks, and welcome to the Mike Lopez TV Show. I'm your host, AC Mike. We'll bring you all things Atlantic City, politics, sports, dining, entertainment, and more. Our first guest tonight is Nelson Johnson, author of the best-selling book, which became a hit HBO series, Boardwalk Empire, The Birth and High Times of Corruption of Atlantic City. Then we'll close out the show with Frank Morano, New York City radio talk show host on 77 WABC. So stick around. We'll be right back with our first guest. Welcome back to the show. Our next guest is Nelson Johnson, author of Boardwalk Empire, The Birth and High Times of Corruption of Atlantic City, the foundation of the hit HBO series, Boardwalk Empire. Nelson Johnson,
Mike,
good afternoon, sir.
Good to see you again, always.
Good to see you, too. Hey, listen, we go back a little ways, back in the times of myself working at the Department of Public Safety, which is a fancy name for the jail. I remember you were a Superior Court judge,
yes,
Atlantic County, and recently retired, I want to say. Is it a little bit more than recently?
Full-time writer now.
There you go. So, hey, we spoke a little bit prior to the interview. One of the first times I really did get to meet you, I was living out in Longport for a little bit, and there was a book signing and a meet and greet at Margate Community Church.
You're correct.
It sounded cool, this Boardwalk Empire.
That's got to be almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
About 20. I don't remember how long, but almost 20 years ago.
It was about 20 years ago, long before HBO series or whatnot. When was the book written? And before we get into that, Judge Nelson Johnson, I'm going to go back and forth. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, locally, that great town of Hamilton.
I'm from Hamilton. My law practice was in Atlantic County. Sometimes my office was in Atlantic City. Sometimes it was in Hamilton, depending upon what firm I was with and what I was doing. And I developed a keen interest in Atlantic City when I represented the planning board in 1980 through 82. It was sort of the Wild West. It was a really crazy place, and I was determined to make sense of it. And the next thing I knew, as my wife says, my curiosity got the better of me, and I wound up with a book.
There you go. And long before the casinos and whatnot and the wild craziness you saw, it was a little bit different back in the day in the Prohibition and where Boardwalk Empire. Now, what was that speared that passion and with that history?
Well, I like trying to make sense of something that I don't understand and I think other people don't understand. So I was trying to make sense of why is Atlantic City City Hall so dysfunctional? And the more I looked at it, what I recognized was that you had a community that was looking for a boss. I mean, you had Coonley, you had Johnson, you had Farley, and then after the last boss, was gone, there was like everybody thinks they're going to be the next boss. And so you got all sorts of hidden agendas, all sorts of backstabbing and craziness. Right. And so I was trying to make sense of that. And I'm a bookworm, and I went to the library, and I had two wonderful research librarians who fed me books. And one thing led to another, and I wound up with a book. And I recognized that Nucky was film. I thought it was going to be a movie. Believe me, a TV series is better than a movie. But I thought he was going to be a movie. And Nucky was just too big a character not for somebody to want to grab hold of.
Not to be one. So when you say that, it's very interesting. Of course, read the book. And when you say bosses, and it's still, and we'll touch about this a little bit later, it still seems part of the problem now. You're a boss, not a public servant. When I say that, we've had 4 or 5 more go to prison. Mayors.
Well, look. Atlantic City has never developed the traditional means for the acquisition, the exercise, and the transfer of power. That's a big problem. So there's only a handful of communities in the state that you could even compare Atlantic City to in terms of that problem.
And it is a problem.
And it is a problem. I'm not going to make light of it.
We'll definitely touch on it. Now, with the book going from print to the screen, so to speak, what was the time period, and is there truth to Scorsese and De Niro or these people, these types reading it and coming to you, but there's a gap of time before this happens?
The book wound up in HBO's hands through a gentleman that I met at I don't know if they're doing them now because of COVID, but back in those days, in the early 2000s, there were pitch festivals. And so if you registered for like $25, you could meet a whole bunch of producers and directors and agents, and you would pitch to them. And I pitched to this one old gentleman who said to me, you know, kid, I remember this guy, Nucky Johnson. He said, when I was a kid, my family would vacation in Atlantic City. We stayed in a kosher boarding house. And if we stayed there 2 weeks, I knew my father's business was doing really good. If we stayed there 1 week, I know he wasn't doing so good. He said, but I remember this guy. And he said, you know, if you look at me, you'd never believe this. He said, but I'm a guy who's known for finding movies for 15-year-old boys on a Saturday afternoon. Give me 4 copies of your book. I got 4 friends, and I think one of them will want to talk to you about it. And he was right. And he was right. So about 6 weeks later, I got a phone call from an agent from a very big firm and said, you know, HBO's interested in your book. Several people have read it. And I said, okay, let's see where it goes. And so before I signed the contract was 15 months. I had to be patient.
How about that? So the patience paid off.
Yeah.
And now you get this call and you go back to Cali, or what happens?
No need to go to California. No, understand, everything with the filming was done in Brooklyn.
Right.
Steve Buscemi lives in Brooklyn. Terry Winter was born and raised in Brooklyn. Much of the staff, you know, and the cast was from the Northeast. So nobody wanted to go to California. So everything was filmed in Brooklyn and surrounding communities.
And that's also when you say Buscemi, of course, Brooklyn. We would have loved Atlantic City, but that's another story.
Well, that's a whole other story because they wanted to shoot some scenes in Atlantic City, but they said, Nelson, there isn't one block where both sides of the street are authentic. And if you go around town, you can't disagree with that. You can't disagree with that. They're right.
So they had to make the set.
So they had to make sets and find, you know, they found neighborhoods in Brooklyn, neighborhoods in the Bronx where they filmed different things. And
I remember speaking to you. We were sitting at one of our establishments having a pie, and some of the names came up that helped you when you say you're a bookworm. Miss Perez and Miss Vicky Gold-Levy. I guess they're still around.
Yeah, Vicky's still around.
Yeah, she's in New York. Became a friend of mine too.
Good lady.
So when something like this, you continue, like you said, they say that it's worthy, that someone's going to enjoy it. Now, how did the others come involved, the directors and whatnot? And
that's all. It's all under HBO's umbrella.
Right.
You know, and Terry Winter, he was the producer. They hired him, and he put everything together. He put together a team, made it all happen.
And over the course of the time, was it 5 or 6 years?
It was 5 years.
5 years it ran, and it's still to this day. I mean, it gets run throughout, whether it's HBO or different stations now. I don't even know. You got Hulu and this Hulu.
Yeah,
and that.
I think it was on Prime for a couple of years.
Prime for a few years. So would there be another Boardwalk Empire?
Mark Wahlberg's talked about a movie, but he hasn't done anything towards it. But he gave an interview once where he said, I think we should do a movie about it.
Yeah, had a chance to sit down and talk with him at Ocean Casino Resort a few years ago when he was opening up his burger joint. And I mentioned it to him, and he said he would love to do it because I know there was some sort of rumor going on. Folks, listen, we're going to be right back. Stay where you're at. It's Judge Nelson Johnson, author, Boardwalk Empire, and there's so much more. The North Side, and we're going to have a good time and have a little chat. Stay right where you're at. Be right back. Welcome back to the show, folks. We're here with author of Boardwalk Empire, North Side, and Darrow's Nightmare, the forgotten story of America's most famous trial lawyer, Judge Nelson. So we talked a little bit about Atlantic City and the beauty that it was and the prohibition and a little bit of the problems that we had. And we were touching on it briefly during the break there, and I'd like to bring it to back to the table. Some of the things with Atlantic City back in the day and what it needs today.
What made old Atlantic City great was spectacle. And by spectacle, I mean events that would draw large crowds of people. So you had all sorts of things, whether it's people doing a high wire act, or whether it was different types of parades, or it was, pie eating contests, dog races, but they were planned by the city, and they knew a certain portion of the tourist population would come for that. Now we got the casinos, and there's nothing wrong with the casinos. They're doing a great job, but it's not their job to promote the city. That's their job to promote themselves. And the city does not do a very good job of promoting itself.
And I agree with you now that we talk about that, like you said, whether it's Hard Rock, Borgata, whatnot, they're going to promote the shows, the folks that are coming in.
Well, they should.
Leno coming in, right. And the city itself, whether it's that field at Bader Field or that beautiful beach or boardwalk that we have, because back in the day, again, I got involved with Miss America back in 2013 when she came back to Atlantic City from Las Vegas. May not have still the hordes of people that were on that boardwalk, but that was the spectacle you're talking about, and it's those marketing people's job.
Correct. And we're not doing that today, and that I think is part of the problem. And I have been to ear of a fair number of people in City Hall over the years, and nothing happened. So I'm saying it again now publicly.
There you go. So I hope you folks are listening, whether it's municipal, state, county, because we do. It's the truth. I mean, what better place to do an event like that than the Atlantic City Boardwalk or Beach? Again, Bader Field I mentioned. There's so many events that were back in the day, and we could just, whether it's the concerts, they do it. But
the concerts are a good thing. The air show is a good thing. But we don't have much beyond those two. We really don't.
No, and we do need more. We're going to touch more on that, whether it be here at the studio at Stockton University or at WOND Radio. We're going to go back and forth with this stuff here. So listen, I mentioned the North Side. One of my favorite books all time to read, Book Nerd, and you said something very interesting, probably a little bit more important than Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, I think it is. See, what's important about the North Side is it tells the story of the indispensable role of the African American community in creating Atlantic City from 1880 to 1930, and those dates do have some shoulders, but I know for at least 50 years, 95% of the hotel workforce was African American. If you remove the black experience from Atlantic City, a town that could host 1/3 people during the summer, that town doesn't even come to exist, because black people built the railroad, they built the hotels, they manned the hotels, and they did all of the work needed for a tourist community. And so it's a really important book, and I do try to explain why the African American community is indispensable to what Atlantic City grew to be.
And on the North Side, in reading that book, and it comes to me, the amount of doctors and businesses. Touch on that. A lot of folks don't.
There's one photo that says it all. In the North Side, I have a photo. It dates back to like 1937, 38, 39. I think it's just before 40. And there's 11 doctors, all of whom live and have their practice on the North Side. Today, there's not one. Not one. Now that's a really sad commentary on a community, but the answer for that is very complicated. I'm not even. Because it gets real involved, and if you wanted to have that conversation, I'd say let's get me and Ralph Hunter up here together, and Ralph and I could play off each other and explain the story, because it's not a pretty story. Let's put it that way.
And I hear what you're saying. I've had Ralph on the show before.
Oh, what a gentleman! What a gentleman!
Yeah, the two of you together. I've somewhere out. I believe it was at Stockton University. It may have been in Atlantic City. He tells the story also. The two of you have it, and we're going to do that. We're going to do that story. So with the North Side, let folks know exactly where in Atlantic City what was considered the North Side as far as geographical.
Well, the North Side was north of Atlantic Avenue,
right.
And then you would say west Yes, west of Absecon Boulevard and that area in there. I mean, did it spread a little? Sure, but I mean, that's pretty much where it was concentrated.
And, the African-American contribution of Atlantic City, and not only that, the state of New Jersey, because it's quite frankly...
Enormous, enormous.
It's enormous. Great book, folks. I definitely recommend that, besides Boardwalk Empire. I enjoyed it. I still have it on my... coffee table, and I hand it to folks. They're like, oh, isn't that the guy that wrote Boardwalk Empire? No, you need to read this book first, and it is. It's incredible. First of all, the amount of, again, I don't mean to repeat myself, whether it was doctors or business professionals.
Oh, God, yeah, all sorts of businesses, all sorts of restaurants, hotels,
right.
Boarding houses, yeah.
It was
the North Side was a vibrant place. At one
something.
time, it truly was.
I'm going to take you up on that, and I'm going to have you and Ralph. We're going to get together, and I'll get the Jitney to pick us up, whether it's here or Linwood at the studio WOND. Judge Nelson, listen, you got to tell me about this, and I touched on this a little bit when we first part of the interview at I'll even say Tony Baloney's. We're sitting there having a pie, soda pop. Darrow's Nightmare. Tell us about that. It's just something that's grabbed you.
Clarence Darrow is one of the best-known lawyers in American history. What people know him for right away is the Scopes monkey trial, where the theory of evolution was put on trial back in Tennessee many years ago. But before that, the worst 2 years of his life were when he was charged with a crime himself and stood trial. Now, other authors have read newspaper articles and historical accounts, but I'm the first author who read the 8,000-page, 12-week trial transcript and then wrote a book based upon that. And it was a lot of work, a lot of fun. It's in the hands of a Hollywood producer. I don't know how long it's going to take. He's telling me it's either 6 hours of TV or it's 2.5 hours of movie, but you know, he's shaping it, and we'll go from there.
And that's the beauty of it. Like you said, when it's in their hands, it's in good hands.
Yeah, it's in good hands, but I just have to be patient now.
Right. So now, where did the, I know you're in law and, being a judge, your love for that, though, to spend that amount of time, and the missus, she's...
Well, I always wanted to be a lawyer. Okay. I had a very uncomplicated life. I had no decisions to make. No choices, no anxiety. At the age of 5, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, and so I never thought about doing anything else. It just went forward. And throughout that time, Clarence Darrow was always, like a role model, a hero, because he was definitely someone who spoke truth to power and paid prices for it. Right. He more than once, his career has setbacks because he backed up, faced up against the wrong people. So I've always admired him. And I always was troubled by those 2 years and how historians dealt with it. Some historians tell you right out, oh, he was guilty. Other ones say, oh, no, he wasn't guilty. But in Los Angeles in 1912, there were 10 newspapers. Every newspaper has its own perspective.
That's right.
And so if you try to talk about a trial based upon newspaper articles, you're just getting, the aroma of the after fact, like maybe walking into a kitchen and smelling different things cooking. The trial transcript, because I've tried a few cases and I presided over about 250 trials, when I read a trial transcript, it comes to life for me.
Right.
And so my job was to make the trial transcript come to life for the reader. I think I did it. I got a producer who thinks I did it. My literary agent thinks I did it. And so we'll see. It's a fickle business. It really is. Right. But I'm patient.
With the track record and the
Boardwalk
passion.
Empire taught me to be patient. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's right. With the passion and, like you said, the patience and it's in the right hands. I'm looking forward to reading it, but also to watch it and see where it winds up. So thanks again, Nelson Johnson, for being on our show today. We appreciate it. I got the feeling that this is going to continue. We'll continue with this here. Stick around, folks. We'll be right back. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Mike Lopez Show. I'm your host, ACMike. Listen, we've got a special guest here, friend of mine, put me on radio, so to speak. I know we're on TV. You got to look at this face. But our friend, Frank Morano. Frank, welcome to the Mike Lopez Show here at Stockton University.
Mike, it is great to be here. You know what a fan I am of yours, both in real life, on radio, on television, on the internet, and in all the forms in which you're mechanically, digitally, and electronically reproduced. It's great for me to see you being such a great advocate for the people of Atlantic City. And it's a real benefit to the people of Atlantic City that they get to not only see you and watch you. And my compliments to the good folks over at Stockton for making this TV show possible.
Listen, so thank you for the kind words, and Stockton makes it happen. It makes it go here. Listen, Frank Morano and his friend Joe Piscopo, as I always say, it were the first folks that gave me a little shout on the radio about 6 or 7 years ago, doing little reports from Atlantic City with another station out there in New York City, 970 The Answer. And our friend Frank now worked those about a decade with our friend Joe. And now the other side of midnight. 77 WABC, New York City. But before we get to that, Frank, you have an addition to your family. Actually, since the last time we spoke, I want to say the first segment of shows that we put together here at 1090 Comcast Stockton University. Tell us how that's been, the baby, beautiful. I see some pictures and whatnot. Fill us in, please.
Well, so my wife, Rachel, and I are over the moon. She gave birth on Thanksgiving to our son, Carmine, and I cannot wait to get him down to the Atlantic City Boardwalk, to take him for his first trip to the Lucky Snake video arcade. He's still working on formulating speech and keeping his baby formula down without spitting up the entire bottle. So we might be a little bit further away from a trip to the Lucky Snake arcade than I'd like, but he's keeping us busy. He's keeping us up, but we wouldn't trade it for anything. He's wonderful. And we're both very, very lucky, both very blessed, thankful that he's healthy, and he's just a joy to be around.
Now, Frank, we appreciate that now. And you have a bit of a strain.
I want to try and make a deal with the folks at Stockton, see if I can prepay his tuition now at the rate that tuition is going up, in the hopes that he wants to go to Stockton.
Could you imagine that? Him sitting here on the boardwalk down Albany Avenue with a dorm room, whatnot? I think you'd be there more than he would.
I think you're probably right. If he has his father's hereditary tendencies when it comes to skipping out on class, I think you're certainly right.
Dr. Kesselman, are you listening, President Kesselman? So we'll get back to that on a little bit. So listen, with your show, The Other Side of Midnight, great ratings. We're going to talk about that in a minute or two. But tell us about that and how it ties in with the baby and all that.
So I'm on from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. So I usually leave my home around 10 p.m. So it does put my wife in a tough position, in that she's basically forced to shoulder during the week the whole evening feeding, crying, changing schedules single-handedly. So when I get home around 6:30, 7 o'clock, I try to look after our son and give her a few hours of relief. It's gotten even more challenging now that she's gone back to work. Thankfully, she is working from home, which does give us a little bit more flexibility. But the lucky thing for me, though, is I've been blessed with an endless amount of radio content. If there is ever a slow day, Mike, when you're on the radio or on TV and you're not sure what to do, you just have to ask, when it comes to parenting or anything related to child rearing, should I blank or should I blank? And you will watch the phones light up. There's an hour worth of a program right there. And it could be anything. Should we breastfeed or use baby formula? Boom, there's an hour. Should we spank? Should we not spank? Boom, that's 2 hours. Forget about it. Any possible parenting issue, it's just gold on the radio. And he's been very good, my son, in terms of allowing me to record him crying to use as a regular radio sound effect on WABC. So I hope your listeners will check it out. We do a lot of AC talk, but we talk about a wide variety of issues, not just parenting, not just Atlantic City, but political issues, entertainment issues, foreign policy, space, you name it, we cover it. And we have a lot of fun in the meantime, as you know.
Listen, we do have so much going on in this world, let alone in our homes and our states and whatnot. But it had to make you happy that you had another whole new broad spectrum of Q&A and investigate. You know, that's awesome. I didn't even think of it.
Absolutely. I couldn't be luckier. I couldn't be luckier. And not only am I happy to have a son, but he's an endless supply of radio content. And I suspect as he learns how to start speaking, then and as he starts crawling, he'll be in even more of a fount of terrific radio content.
So Frankie, listen, we're going to have more of that on the next episode we have together segment. But talk to us a little bit. We got about 3 minutes for this interview. Talk to us about your show, what you do, and how folks can get tied into it, because you do. Although you're in New York City, you're all over the world, you know, whether it's the internet or whatnot, but you have a large audience from our area out here in Jersey, South Jersey.
Well, that's true. Now, every week, truth is, we do it at least more than once a week, but at least once a week, we do a half hour dedicated to the things that are happening in Atlantic City. Could be anything. Could be about gambling, could be about nightlife, could be about the entertainment that's out there, could be about the politics, could be about anything. I had our friend David Pena on with an astrologer the other day talking about astrology in Atlantic City. So WABC 770 AM is one of the most powerful signals in America, especially at night. So folks in South Jersey, you tune your radio to 770 AM, you'll hear us. But the nice thing now is, especially young people, I'm sure you know, Mike, that fewer and fewer people under the age of 30 even know what a radio is. I mentioned the word radio. I say I work in radio to a young person. They think I'm almost the equivalent of a telegraph operator, and they have no idea what that is. But everybody can listen by going to WABCradio.com. Again, I'm on from 1 to 5, or on their smartphone. Now, what's this show all about? The show's about anything. Mike, when you and I are having lunch at a great Atlantic City restaurant or something, or walking on the boardwalk, the same sort of issues that we talk about are the same sort of issues that I might talk about on the radio. Could be relationships, parenting, weight loss, politics, entertainment, business, sports, you name it. We look, the bottom line is we got 4 hours to fill. The good thing is we fill those 4 hours with as wide a variety of subjects as you can possibly imagine. We take listener calls from all walks of life, and we like to have some fun, because while there are a lot of serious issues going on in the world, you know, if you take them too seriously, you get depressed. So we try and approach a lot of these subjects with a certain degree of levity that maybe is not present on a lot of aspects of AM talk radio.
And I love it, Frankie. Listen, we're about out of time here, but I just want to let folks know, make sure you tune in. We'll put the graphics up with this interview. Frankie's got a great show. Anytime I've ever tuned it in, I'm amazed by the callers first. So I know it's New York and all that, but the amazing, you know, you got a full board each and every hour of your show. So
we're very blessed to have a wide audience all over the country, especially in Atlantic City, especially in South Jersey. And I'm very much looking forward to your next appearance on the show, Mike.
So thank you so much. We're going to be talking to Frank again as the summer gets into effect here in 2022. Frankie, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you, my friend.
Right where you're at. We'll be right back. Hey folks, it's our belief here at the Mike Lopez TV Show that you, the viewers and our guests, bring the show to life. Thanks to each and every one of you for joining us. To learn more about AC Mike, follow me on Facebook at Mike Lopez, LiveWorkPlayAC, and AC Mike, and on Instagram at ACMikeNJ. Remember to live, work, play, and I'll see you on the 48.